everyone, welcome to Twilight. Problem is possibility, and this is Dr. Rajalakshmi. Today I am here to discuss our second part of endocrine series, that is myxedema crisis. Myxedema crisis is one of the endocrine emergency that we can see in our ICU patients. And the problem with this disease is there can be many overlapping of symptoms and signs between this disease and other commonly seen disease in the ICU, especially sepsis. And there can be many overlapping of features between this myxedema crisis and other endocrine diseases like adrenal crisis. So we should have high level of suspicion to diagnose this disease. Delayed diagnosis and management will result in increased mortality and bad outcomes. So I'm going to start with the case we get. 40 years old female patient presented to ER with history of altered sensorium since 2 days. Low grade fever since 4 days. Fever with altered sensorium. On arrival, her vitals: blood pressure was 80 by 50. She was hypotensive and she was bradycardic, sinus bradycardia with heart rate of 50 per minute. And she was hypoventilating with respiratory rate of 10 per minute. And her saturation was 80% with room air. So she was hypoxemic and hypoventilating, hypotensive, and with sinus bradycardia. Labs wise, ABG was showing acute respiratory acidosis and metabolic acidosis. CPP, anemia, hemoglobin of 8, TLC was 15,000 with normal platelet count. RFT wise, hyponatremia, hyperkalemia is there, creatinine of 1.2. LFT were within normal limits, PTINR was normal, CUE was normal. She was hypothermic, temperature was 97.2 Fahrenheit. GCS wise, E3, V4, M5. She was erosible following commands. Hypoglycemia was there with GRPS of 60 mg per deciliter. So we thought that altered sensorium is because of hypoglycemia. We gave 25% dextrose and normalized her glucose levels. Still sensorium hasn't improved. So considering her history of fever and altered sensorium, high blood count of 15,000, we thought our initial diagnosis was sepsis. Sepsis with septic shock and mild AKA and hypoperfusion state. So we have done fluid resuscitation. We gave fluid boluses, IV crystalloids, and normalized her intravascular volume. Started her on vasopressor supports, and we have continued with our further investigative workup to locate to find the cause of the source of the infection. Chest X-ray was done that was showing bilateral pleural effusions plus or minus consolidation, underlying consolidation. Ultrasound lung was done showing pleural effusion with underlying possible consolidation. So we thought it's community acquired pneumonia, septic shock, and organ failure. 2D echo was done that was showing mild global hypokinesia, minimal pericardial effusion. So to rule out cardiac event, we have sent troponin. Troponin I was negative. Blood cultures were sent, and empirical antibiotics were started with ceftriaxone, sulbactam, and doxycycline. Combination therapy was started to handle her community acquired pneumonia. Doxycycline to cover atypical bacteria. ECG was showing mild non-specific ST and T changes. And further, to confirm the diagnosis of pneumonia, we had done diagnostic pleural tapping, but it was transited. So underlying the cause of pleural effusion is not the pneumonia, so it's ruling out pneumonia. So to further going ahead to find the source of infection, considering our history of altered sensorium, we had done neuroimaging, CT brain and CSF analysis were done. Both were normal, no evidence of any infection. Her sensorium got deteriorated, so for airway protection, we had to intubate her and kept her on invasive ventilation, pressure control mode, and her PF ratios post intubation 150, ETCO2 was 40 millimeters of mercury. So till this point, we don't know the cause of her presentation because CSF analysis was negative and pleural fluid sized for transitate. On day 3, shock got worsened, increasing vasopressor support. Sensorium got worsened in spite of absence of sedation. Cultures were sterile, procalcitonin was negative. So the septic workup has end up with negative results. So there is no evidence of the infection, but clinical condition is been deteriorating. It is not cardiogenic shock, it is not septic shock. So what else it can be? So the other spectrum of the shock that we see in the ICU is endocrine shock. So to rule out endocrine shock, we have to do thyroid workup and adrenal workup. So we had sent thyroid profile and cortisol levels that came to be hypothyroidism with TSH of 8 and low T3, T4, low free T3, low free T4. Cortisol was within normal limits. So the diagnosis is decompensation of hypothyroidism and myxedema crisis. What is myxedema crisis? It's a life-threatening decompensation of hypothyroidism because of some precipitating factor. The precipitating factor can be, there are n number of precipitating factors. Among them, the common precipitating factors are sepsis, CVA, MI, congestive heart failure, drugs like amiodarone and other sedatives like benzodiazepines, trauma, internal bleed. If patient is known hypothyroid, if he or she stopped taking thyroxine supplements, that also can precipitate myxedema crisis. One case report has been published few years ago in China. After consumption of raw cabbage, raw Chinese cabbage, patient had myxedema crisis. This particular vegetable contains thiocyanates, and this will be metabolized into nitriles, this particular vegetable contains glucosinolates. These glucosinolates will be metabolized into thiocyanates, nitriles, and oxazolidines. These three components will inhibit uptake of iodine. And this metabolism has been regulated by an enzyme called myrosinase. Cooking will deactivate this enzyme and prevents the degradation of thiocyanates into its active metabolites. So non-hypothyroid patients avoid this consumption of cabbage, especially in raw state. What is the pathogenesis of myxedema crisis? Thyroid T3 is the active hormone and it is required for all metabolic functions of all vital organs. So in case of myxedema crisis, there will be low intracellular availability of T3 and results in decreased contractility of the heart, cardiogenic shock and congestive heart failure. So to compensate this cardiac uh, to compensate for this decreased function of the heart, there will be increased systemic vascular resistance and mild diastolic hypertension and diminished blood volume. This compensatory mechanism will be there in initial phases. Later, this compensatory mechanism will get exhausted, results in vasodilatory shock, and uh, this vasodilatory shock may not respond to our conventional vasopressor therapy unless we start supplementing thyroxine. There will be decreased inotropism, chronotropism with vasoconstriction. That means contractility of the heart will be decreased, heart rate will be decreased. So, this, coming to respiratory system, there will be decreased sensitivity of the central nervous system to hypoxia and hypercarbia. That results in hypoxic and hypercapnic respiratory failure. Other contributing factors for respiratory failure are respiratory muscle dysfunction, obesity, pleural effusions, and macroglacia, reduced lung volume, and increased airway resistance because of myxedema of nasopharynx and larynx, and other factors, aspiration pneumonia. There will be pleural effusions, NSRK and pericardial effusion are because of increased vascular permeability. And water retention and hyponatremia can be seen. These two findings are because of decreased blood volume that results in decreased blood volume and decreased blood pressure because of negative inotropic and negative chronotropic effect of the disease. That results in decreased GFR, in turn results in decreased delivery of sodium to distal nephron, so and excessive secretion of the vasopressin. All these factors together results in water retention and hyponatremia. Hypoglycemia is because of decreased glycosenolysis, septic shock, and concomitant adrenal insufficiency. CNS dysfunction is because of hypothyroid per se and other metabolic abnormalities like hypoglycemia, hyponatremia, and hypoxemia. So overall, because of myxedema crisis, there will be decreased intracellular availability of the T3 and low serum T4. This results in decreased inotropism, decreased chronotropism, and hypothermia. And because of this, there will be cardiogenic shock and hyponatremia, respiratory failure, and worsening mental status. All these factors can result in deep coma. Coming to clinical features, there will be dry skin, sparse hair, a hoarse voice, hypothermia, delayed tendon reflexes, macroglacia, non-pitting edema, and goiter. If we find this eye sign, this is called orbitopathy. We see this eye sign in case of hyperthyroidism, but because of treatment of hypothyroidism like surgery, thyroidectomy, or radioactive iodine therapy, patient can be having hypothyroidism and myxedema crisis. So there will be prolongation of the QT interval, there will be sinus bradycardia, bundle branch block. Sometimes it can result in malignant arrhythmia. Imbalance between sympathetic and vagal system can result in refractory arrhythmia and cardiac arrest. Hematology, normocytic normochromic anemia because of decreased oxygen requirement and decreased synthesis of the erythropoietin. Macrocytic picture can also be seen, especially in case of folate coexisting folate deficiency and decreased folate absorption. Bleeding time, clotting time will be increased because of decreased activity of the factor 8 and decreased platelet function. APTT will be increased. So prolonged bleeding time, prolonged clotting time, elevated APTT is expected in case of myxedema crisis, and bleeding tendencies will be there. There will be possibility of type 1 or acquired von Willebrand's disease. And the difference between type 1 von Willebrand's disease and type 2 is the ratio of this factor to estostatin factor will be normal. If at all patient is going for any emergency surgery in the presence of myxedema crisis, desmopressin will helps to improve the platelet function and decrease the bleeding tendency. We can make use of desmopressin for its transient effect to improve function of the platelets and to improve the function of coagulation factors. Other signs will be increased CPK, LDH, liver transaminases, and hypercholesterolemia will be there. To find out the history, we have to inquire about the presence of thyroid dysfunction, if at all it is there. What is the dose of thyroxine supplement he or she has been taking, and any discontinuation of the thyroid supplement, any other coexisting disease, any history of thyroid surgery and radioactive iodine ablation, and detailed medication history that patient has been taking previously. These are all signs and symptoms of myxedema crisis. Already discussed in a detailed way in previous slides. How to diagnose? If we have suspicion of myxedema crisis, patient presented with altered sensorium, hypoglycemia, hypothermia, hyponatremia, and then now patient is having a cardiac dysfunction, shock, sinus bradycardia, or some other rhythm issues. We should always rule out hypothyroidism and myxedema crisis by doing thyroid profile. In case of the typical scenario, we can see high TSH, low T3, low T4. If it is central hypothyroidism, some problem with hypothalamic pituitary axis, there will be low TSH, low T3, low T4. Problem is if there is coexisting sick thyroid, the analysis of the biochemistry will be a bit cumbersome. In that scenario, TSH will not increase as expected. TSH will be normal or high normal, and there will be extremely low level of T3. This is the one of the clue to diagnose myxedema crisis with coexisting sick thyroid state. Coming to management, organ support, and we should do extensive or meticulous search to know the precipitating factors like stroke, bleed, infection, MI, heart failure. So any drugs, drug default. So all these factors we should be able to find out the cause of myxedema crisis. Unless we find the cause, the problem will recur. And we should always make efforts to rule out the coexisting adrenal insufficiency. because the thyroid supplements will further aggravates the adrenal crisis if at all there is coexisting adrenal insufficiency. And we should be thorough in terms of correction of all electrolyte levels like hyponatremia, hyperkalemia, and normalizing the calcium levels. Coming to organ support, hemodynamics wise, we should be aggressive about fluid resuscitation and start vasopressors to maintain normal perfusion pressure, normal hemodynamics, and avoid aspiration if patient sensorium is deteriorating. Keep low threshold to intubate and keep the patient on invasive mechanical ventilation. Coming to specific management, thyroxine supplements, T4 is available, T3 is also an option, but among these two, T4 and T3, T4 is readily available, and with the help of T4, we can maintain steady and smooth concentration of the T4 in the serum, and we can avoid major peaks and troughs. And another major advantage is we'll be able to interpret the results of T4 and we can know the response to treatment. If T4 is improving with our treatment, the prognosis will be better and we can say patient is recovering. The dose of IV T4 is 300 to 500 micrograms as a bolus and followed by 50 to 100 micrograms per day till patient recovers. Later on we can optimize the dose. Coming to enteral route, it is equally effective as parenteral route, but problem is there will be high chances of the aspiration if patient is not on mechanical ventilation. Sometimes the absorption can be impaired. The dose is 500 mics loading followed by 150 per day. Coming to T3, the major advantage of IV T3 is there is rapid onset of the action, so rapid recovery. All neurological oxygen consumption temperature wise within hours patient will recover compared to the T4. With the T4 the recovery will be bit delayed. It takes more than 24 hours. The dose of T3 10 to 20 mics as a bolus followed by 10 mics every 4th hourly in first 24 hours and 10 mics every 6th hourly for 1 to 2 days till patient is alert enough to take oral route. Limitations of T3 is the major limitation is availability. It's not available in many parts of the world and the serum levels are fluctuating. We cannot maintain a steady or smooth concentration of the T3 like T4 and it has been associated with advanced cardiac events and precipitation of the heart failure. The doses of T4 more than 500 micrograms per day, T3 more than 75 micrograms per day have been associated with increased mortality. These two are maximum limits for these two particular molecules. What is the role of steroids? As I told, there is a high possibility of coexisting adrenal insufficiency. So on the arrival itself, we should able to send serum cortisol or other investigations to assess hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. If we don't have provision to assess the function of HPA axis, we can start off with steroid therapy before starting the thyroxine supplement with IV hydrocortisone 50 mg 6th hourly or IV dexamethasone. Then we can continue with our thyroid hormone replacement because thyroid hormone replacement alone can precipitate adrenal insufficiency by increasing the cortisol clearance. This is the score has been proposed to diagnose the myxedema coma. It includes all symptoms and signs related to all organs. If it is more than 60, diagnostic, less than 25, less likely. So considering taking advantage of this session, I want to discuss Hashimoto's encephalopathy also because this is one of the rare cause of altered sensorium in ICU patients. This is autoimmune encephalitis and the course can be relapsing remitting or slowly progressive. That can be acute onset of altered sensorium or slowly progressive altered sensorium. There can be history of cognitive dysfunction, behavioral changes. There can be history of seizure or a patient can throw seizure in the ICU. The history of stroke-like episodes, transient ischemic attacks can happen, myoclonus, tremors, And psychosis also can happen, like visual hallucinations and delusions. Sleep disturbances, sleep disorders, mood disturbances, these are all reported symptoms and signs in case of the Hashimoto's encephalopathy. This is not related to myxedema crisis. This one of the autoimmune encephalitis can be associated with autoimmune thyroiditis. The diagnostic criteria for this encephalopathy is presence of these symptoms and signs along with anti-thyroid antibodies. Other uncommon features, like the patient can have fever, fatigue, malaise, headache, gait disturbances, ataxia, nystagmus, tremors, coriform movements, and cerebellar signs. Anti-thyroid antibodies, like thyrotropin receptor antibodies can be seen, and the most specific is antibodies against other structures or proteins, like anti-TPO antibodies. Anti-TPO antibodies is the most specific to Hashimoto's encephalopathy. So clinical signs plus anti-TPO antibodies will confirm the diagnosis of Hashimoto's encephalopathy. Other antibodies which have been associated with this disease are anti-thyroglobulin antibodies, anti-sodium iodide antibodies, alpha enolase antibodies. The thyroid state can most commonly thyroid state will be normal. Most of the patients will be euthyroid state. Sometimes subclinical hypothyroid features will be there. Hyperthyroidism is very rare. Before confirming the diagnosis, we should always rule out other causes of altered sensory, like meningitis, seizure, stroke. So we have to do CSF analysis, EEG, and MRI. In Hashimoto's encephalopathy, in few scenarios, we can see increased enhancement, white matter enhancement, dual enhancement in T2 and flare. Biopsy is indicated whenever we are not able to come to diagnosis and to rule out other causes of altered sensory, especially neurodegenerative diseases and multiple sclerosis. In Hashimoto's encephalopathy, biopsy will show some kind of vasculitic picture, like mural lymphocytic infiltration, perivascular inflammation, myelogliosis, and perivascular lymphocytic cuffing. So whenever our diagnosis is doubtful and patient is not responding to our steroids, or there is progressive encephalopathy in spite of treatment, we have to do brain biopsy. So these are all a few investigations we can do, we have to do in case of suspected Hashimoto's encephalopathy. Anti-TPO antibodies of titers more than 200 is a diagnostic of Hashimoto's encephalopathy, followed by positive anti-TG antibodies. The treatment will be IV methylprednisolone 1 to 2 mg per kg. We have to give for 4 to 6 weeks, and we can taper later on. Should always watch for adverse effects of steroid, like hyperglycemia and other adverse effects, secondary infections and osteoporosis. If patient is not responding steroids, if we are very sure of the diagnosis, we can try IVIG and plasmapheresis. So that is for today, and we'll meet up soon with next topic called that is thyrotoxicosis. So have a good day and stay safe.